It was a perfect day, even though it was Monday. The job was perfect because I owned my own consulting firm, which meant I didn't have a boss. I built an extension to our house for my office so I could work from home and not have to deal with traffic on the way into the city, another reason why it was a perfect day. My wife Anne, to whom I have been married for 20 years, came home from work today and cooked us a wonderful dinner. She's still as beautiful as she was on our wedding day, and she doesn't look 42 years old. Yes, it was a perfect day. To cap off this perfect Monday, I planned to spend the night making love. Well, at least I thought making love would be the end to this perfect day. We used to make love 4 or 5 times a week at the beginning of our marriage, but over the years the frequency decreased, although the quality remained high. For the last 3 months my wife has limited it to once a week, on Fridays only, which doesn't suit me or meet my needs. She also became a real bitch during this time. Probably from lack of sex. I haven't had enough sex lately, so I decided that we would make love that night to end this perfect day. I wasn't going to wait until Friday. During dinner, I told my wife that we would make love that night. And my body needs a release, so we'll make love tonight. I'm not going to wait until Friday, I said. I'm very tired today. Maybe tomorrow night or the day after tomorrow, my wife said. No, we will make love tonight, I said firmly. I think you should be more attentive to me. I work a lot and am very tired when I come home from work, my wife said. Dear wife, I work no less than you. Either you do it to me, or I'll go to Denver and get a girl for money to do it in front of you. Either way, I'm going to have sex tonight. I'm tired of you limiting us to only once a week. It is a wife's duty to satisfy her husband, I said. My wife looked angry but didn't say anything. She stood up from the table and began to collect the dishes from dinner and then put them in the dishwasher. I didn't want to put up with her attitude, so I got up and went to my office to finish some work. Around 9:30 p.m., I finished some reports that were coming up. It's the perfect day when you get all your work done. Now it's time for sex. In relation to my wife, I realized that this would be sex only for my satisfaction. I walked out of the office and found my wife watching one of her favorite TV shows. I walked over to the TV and turned it off. I'm sure this made her even angrier. Time to go to bed, I said. My wife sat there looking at me with an "I'm mad at you" look. I'm already tired of her being a bitch. Upstairs now, I said. My wife stood up and headed towards the stairs, and I followed her. She walked into our bathroom and slammed the door. My wife uses a diaphragm for birth control. She always wants to put it in behind closed doors like it's a secret. I undressed and climbed into bed to wait for her. I usually shower before bed, but today I took it before dinner so we could get to bed faster. My wife came out of the bathroom and climbed into bed next to me. She didn't say anything, but sighed heavily. She was lying on her back, ready for sex. Of course, it's not very exciting. She made it clear that she was only going to do the bare minimum. To end the perfect day, I decided to do everything I could to give her the best sex I've had in years. During the process, my wife called me Tony. Stop. Who is Tony? I immediately stopped moving and stared at my wife. She opened her eyes to see why I wasn't continuing. Darling, why did you stop? Said Anne. You just called me Tony. Who is Tony? I said angrily. Oh my God, honey, it's just a disclaimer. This means nothing, said my wife. I asked you, who the hell is Tony? I said. My wife sat down on the bed and looked confused. Anne can be very stubborn, and I could tell she wasn't going to tell me, so I got out of bed and grabbed my clothes. I headed down the stairs straight to the kitchen where I got dressed. I found my Crocs by the patio door and put them on. My wife walked down the stairs and walked into the kitchen naked. Honey, please come back to bed. Please, let's go back and finish, she said. When I asked you for sex at dinner, you were too tired, and now you're begging me. That's not going to happen, and I'm not Tony, I said angrily. I walked up to her and took her by the shoulders. Go back upstairs and put your clothes on. We're going to talk a little here in the kitchen, I said calmly. She looked at me with a frown and didn't move. And go and get dressed. Now, I said firmly. She slowly turned around and headed upstairs. I hurried to the laundry room. Every day when my wife comes home, she always puts her purse on the counter in the laundry room. I found her bag exactly where she always happens to be. I rummaged through her bag. Keys, lipstick, pill case. I found her cell phone at the bottom, so I put it and her keys in my pocket. There was a zippered pocket inside the bag. I opened it and found a pack of condoms, 7 in total. I took condoms and headed to my office. In the office, I opened my briefcase. My laptop was fully charged and in my briefcase, ready for field work. I put my mobile phone, my wife's mobile phone, and her keys on the laptop and put the condoms in my pocket to show to my wife later. We have a landline, mostly for my work from home, but some of our friends call us in the evenings and on weekends because we don't answer cell phones when we're not working. We have 2 cordless landline phones, one in my office and one in the kitchen. I put the one from my office in my briefcase and closed it. I hurried back to the kitchen with my briefcase. I took the cordless phone from there and also put it in my briefcase, which I then hid under the kitchen table. I sat down at the kitchen table and waited for my wife. Anne came into the kitchen dressed in jeans, a sweater, and socks. "Get us some glasses of iced tea and let's talk for a while," I said softly. She prepared 2 glasses of iced tea, placing one in front of me and the other in front of her as she sat down at the table. "We will have an adult conversation. I won't get angry or yell, and I don't want you to start complaining. I expect you to tell the truth," I said quietly and calmly. My wife just looked at me and didn't say anything. "Tell me, who is Tony?" I asked. Anne lowered her head, simply looking at her glass of tea, and said nothing. "We'll sit here until you start talking, even if it's until tomorrow morning," I said. "I need to sleep because I have to go to work tomorrow," Anne said. "I don't care about your job." "Anne, tell me, who is Tony?" I asked softly. When I'm really angry, I become very calm and speak quietly. It's a skill I learned when I was in the military interrogating people. There may be another interrogation this evening, but this time with my wife. We sat in silence for several minutes. Anne looked at her glass of tea, and I looked at her. "Anne, since you don't want to talk to me and I need to calm down, I'll go for a short walk. I'll be gone for about an hour. During this time, I want you to get your thoughts in order so that we can discuss this serious issue. When I return, I will ask you some questions, and I want answers, not silence. I have your car keys and all our phones, so you won't be able to leave and you won't be able to call anyone, especially Tony. Just sit here and get ready to tell me about him," I said calmly. I grabbed my briefcase and headed to the laundry room. I went to the garage and got into the car. I left and headed to the park, which was a few blocks away. There were no other cars there, so I parked in the first spot. I sat there practicing breathing techniques that I used to lower my blood pressure and calm myself. Who am I mad at? I was angry at my wife because she has never been one to even look at other men, so why cheat now? I decided that I was mostly mad at this Tony guy because he seduced my wife. All I could think about was how to make Tony disappear when I found out who he was. I opened my briefcase and pulled out Anne's cell phone. I was surprised to find that it was locked. She had never blocked him before. The phone required 4 digits to unlock, so I tried our address. Then the last 4 digits of our landline. Then her date of birth. Finally, I tried the last 4 digits of her social security number. Hooray, it worked. I looked at her call log. There was nothing there, and nothing in the basket either. Then I checked her messages. There was nothing there, and nothing in the basket either. She keeps her phone clean and locked. Something is wrong here. I took out my laptop and turned it on. I need to go online. There were several hotels in the area, and I found one with free Wi-Fi. I connected to the internet and logged in as Anne. I checked Anne's contact list, but Tony wasn't there. I looked at her emails, and there were no emails from Tony. Then I checked Anne's Facebook page. The first thing I saw was that her messenger icon was active, so I clicked on it. A message from Tony Martin popped up. I scrolled back to the beginning of the messages from Tony and found that they started about 8 weeks ago. The first few messages seemed to be compliments of Anne, but about 5 weeks ago, the content of the messages changed. There was a message about how good the lunch was and how much he enjoyed the special dish. The next message contained the address, 3450 Ridge Avenue, hash 122, 12 inches, and possibly the time. The rest of the messages were days of the week and numbers, which I understood to be meeting times. So Tony must be her lover, and he tells her the days and times to meet at this address, probably at his home. It appears that she met him at his home 6 times, and usually at 11:30 or 12 noon. According to the latest message, she is supposed to meet him this Thursday at 1 p.m. I don't intend to let that happen. At that moment, a car pulled up behind me, and the spotlights were shining into my back window. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a police officer approaching my car. I rolled down the window and greeted the policeman. "Good evening. What are you doing here at this time?" he asked. "My wife and I had a fight, and I came here to calm down," I said. "Yes, I have to do that sometimes too. You can't stay here all night. It violates city ordinances," he said. "I'll be here for about another half hour, and then I'll go home and meet my wife," I said. "Good idea. Even if you are right, just tell her that you are sorry. It works for me," he said, and then got back into his car and drove out of the park. My wife works for a large architecture firm in Denver, so I went to their web page. I found the key employees page and started looking for someone named Tony. I saw a photograph of my wife and her short biography. She is the manager of their research group. They check suppliers and their products. The last person on the key employees list was Tony Martin, who was hired about 3-4 months ago from a firm in Dallas to manage the interior design group. His photo showed a very handsome man with black hair and dark eyes. He was clean-shaven and looked younger than my wife and I, maybe 10 years or more. I found Tony Martin on Facebook. There were several of them, but only one was an architect. On its cover was a photo of him standing next to a new black BMW. There were no photos of his wife or children on his page. This is weird. In the About section of his page, I found that he is married to Linda Martin. It was an active link, and I clicked on it. Her Facebook page showed her to be a very attractive red-haired woman with 2 red-haired boys. It stated that they lived in Dallas, Texas. There were recent photos of the boys at school, so his wife apparently hasn't moved to Denver yet. I opened Google Maps and entered the address from Tony's message to Anne. The address turned out to be the address of an elite residential complex. Everything is starting to come together. I turned off the laptop and put it back in my briefcase. I took Anne's cell phone again and looked at her phone contacts. Neither Tony nor Martin were there, but I found a TM with a phone number and address. The address matched the address in Tony's Facebook post. I had a phone in the glove compartment for work purposes. I took it and called the number for TM. A sleepy voice answered the call. "I'm trying to get through to Tony Martin," I said. "I'm Tony Martin," he replied. "Do you know Ann Miller?" I asked. "Yes, she works with me." "Who is this?" asked Tony. "I'm your worst nightmare, bastard," I said and hung up. This is definitely the guy who sleeps with my wife. I wrote down his phone number and address in my cell phone. I calmed down a lot while sitting in the park. I realized that making Tony disappear was a bad idea. I decided to make fun of him and teach him a lesson. I used some techniques that I learned in the military. The first is sleep deprivation. It makes a person unable to concentrate and easily irritated. I could do this by calling him often at night. I will also do little things to annoy him. Hopefully, these 2 methods will make him believe that someone is out to harm him. When the time comes, I will do something painful to him when he least expects it. I felt that I had learned enough about my wife's lover, so I went home. I was gone for a little over an hour. As our garage door opened, I saw the door leading to the laundry room open and Anne standing there. I got out of the car with my briefcase and met her at the door. She quickly kissed me and said, "Darling, I was afraid that you wouldn't come back. I will never leave you alone so you can have sex with Tony all the time," I said and headed to the kitchen. I sat down at the table and waited for my wife to sit down. She brought a jug of fresh tea to the table and sat down. Are you ready to talk to me now? I want you to tell me the truth. If you lie, I will find out, and the consequences will be very serious. You understood? I asked. She nodded in agreement. So tonight we were making love, and you said, Tony, do you remember saying that, Anne? I asked. She lowered her head and nodded in agreement. Fine. Now tell me about Tony, I said. It was a slip of the tongue. This means nothing. Honestly, dear, I'm really sorry, she said. Okay, you don't want to tell me who Tony is, so let's approach this from a different angle. You said, Tony. It was so natural to you that you didn't realize you said it. However, you say it was a slip of the tongue. So, I asked. Yes, my wife replied. Well, I believe you slept with Tony many times because it came too easily from your lips. You have said it many times before. I believe you fantasized about Tony making love to you tonight, not me. You had your eyes closed, and in your mind, it was Tony making love to you, and that's why you said that, I said. Anne looked up at me, and I saw that she had tears in her eyes. In your mind, it was Tony making love to you, not me. I can't tell you how much it hurts me to think that you imagine another man making love to you, not me, and to make it even worse, you called me by his name, not mine. Anne said nothing, but began to cry heavily. I lifted her chin so she looked into my eyes. I want to remind you of something important about our marriage, so I want you to look at me and listen carefully. When you married me, you not only gave me your love, but also yourself, rejecting all others, and all that in our vows. Yes, you belong to me. This is called adultery. You understand? I asked. Anne just looked at me and didn't say anything. Her crying had stopped, but her nose was still running. Go get some tissues and come back here. We have a lot to discuss, I said. Anne went to the kitchen and returned with a box of tissues. She wiped her eyes and blew her nose. Now let's get back to your novel. I know you're having sex with Tony, but you don't want to tell me about it. I believe that you have feelings for him, which is why you are protecting him. Since you won't tell me about him, I had to find out on my own who your lover is. I know this is Tony Martin, who lives at 3450 Ridge Avenue, #122. He was recently hired by your firm to manage the interior design group. He used to work for an architecture firm in Dallas, Texas, I said. Anne's face turned pale and her eyes became like saucers. How did you know? Anne started to say, but I interrupted her. Did you know that he is married to a beautiful red-haired woman and they have 2 sons? His wife and kids haven't moved to Denver yet, I said. I saw the ring on his hand, but no one lived in his apartment and there were no photographs of his wife. I thought maybe they were separated or divorced, Anne said. Have you thought about asking him? Of course not. You were only interested in having sex with him, I said. Anne just looked at me. How did you know? She started to say again, but I interrupted her again. Anne, have you forgotten that I worked in military intelligence when I was in the army? I know where to find information about people, I said. Anne fell into a chair. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and blew her nose. Did you please him? I asked. Only for the first time. We kissed in his car, and I gave him a blowjob, but that's all we did at lunch. So I guess you could say we had sex 7 times, Anne explained. After I was with him, I always took a shower when I got home. I brushed my teeth and rinsed my mouth, Anne said. Have you ever given me a second class? I asked. No. You and I only had sex on Fridays because Tony couldn't meet me on Fridays. So I was clean for you, Anne replied. Did you let him have special sex with you? I asked. No, only you can do this to me, Anne said. We have one more thing to do tonight, and then we can go to bed. Tomorrow you will call work and say that you have a sinus infection and that you won't come to work until the end of the week. We need time because we have a lot to do. Understood, I said. Tomorrow I will call work, as you asked. Honey, I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? Asked Anne. No, I cannot. I think we're done for today, but I have one errand to run right now. You go take a shower and go to bed. I'll be back soon, I said. Where are you going? She asked. You don't need to know that. Go take a shower and get clean, I said. I locked my briefcase containing my laptop, our cell phones, and 2 landlines and left it in the office. I then headed to the garage and grabbed a utility knife from my toolbox. When I left home, I entered Tony's address into the car's navigation system and saved it as TM. I followed the directions and arrived at a very nice apartment complex. I found Tony's apartment, hash 122. I took Anne's keys and held the key in my hand. I looked around for security cameras and found none. I looked at Tony's door and noticed that he didn't have a doorbell with a camera, so I walked over to his door. The manufacturer's name on the lock on the door matched the brand on the key. I inserted the key into the lock and quietly opened the door. Yes, Tony gave my wife a key to his apartment. They must be serious about each other. I left. When he finds his door unlocked, it will upset him. Then I looked for his car. It was easy to find because there was only one black BMW, plus it was parked in front of Tony's apartment and had Texas license plates. I took a utility knife out of my pocket and cut off all 4 valves on his tires and put them in my pocket. Within seconds, Tony had 4 flat tires. I got into the car and called Tony again from my work phone. "Hello," he said. You could hear from his voice that he was sleeping. "It will take you longer to get to work tomorrow, so get up early," I said and hung up. Between the late-night calls, the unlocked front door, and his 4 flat tires, I caught his attention. I am back. When I entered the house, all the lights were off except the stairs. I went to our bedroom and undressed. I climbed into bed and found Anne naked and waiting for me. "I was worried you might not come back," she said. I went to bed next to her. "So you won't kick me out?" asked Anne. "No, the guest bed is just not ready for you yet. Tomorrow I want you to remove everything you put there and make the bed because you will sleep there," I said and turned on my side, facing away from her. Tuesday. The next morning the alarm went off and we both got up and got dressed. Anne prepared us a delicious breakfast. There was no conversation during the meal. When we finished and Anne put the dishes away, I gave her one of our cordless phones and reminded her to call work. She called and asked to take sick leave for the rest of the week. I took the cordless phone back because I didn't want her to contact Tony. "I need to know that this affair is over. Tony is no longer in your life," I told my wife firmly. She lowered her head and said quietly, "Yes, it's over." "Fine, then we have things to do," I said. I took several pairs of nitrile gloves from the kitchen and put them in my pocket. My wife uses them when cooking, especially when working with meat or vegetables. We're going to get tested for STDs, and then I have some other things to do, so grab your purse and let's go, I said. I drove us to the nearest urgent care center where we had our blood drawn for STDs. We were told that the results would be ready in 3 days. When we got back to the car, I took my work phone out of the glove compartment and called Tony at his work number. Anne gave me his number. He answered immediately. "This is Tony Martin. How can I help?" he said. "How did you get to work this morning?" I asked and hung up. "What was it?" asked my wife. "I think he had car problems this morning. I wanted to make sure he was at work and not at home," I replied. I then pulled up the TM address into the car's GPS, which I had saved last night. When I arrived at Tony's apartment, Anne looked very nervous. "Why are we here?" she asked. "Wait and see," I replied. I parked in front of his car, which still had 4 flat tires. He probably took a taxi or Uber to get to work. I put on gloves and asked Anne to do the same. I didn't want to leave fingerprints. We walked to his door, and I used Anne's key to open it. Once we were both inside, I locked the door. "I assume you had sex on his bed." "Where is she?" I asked. "This apartment belongs to the company. The master bedroom is locked and reserved for our clients. Tony bought his own bed and put it in one of the other bedrooms," Anne explained. Anne led me upstairs and down a short hallway to the bedroom. The room only had a queen-size bed and an alarm clock on the floor. I took out a utility knife and cut the pillows, scattering the filling around the room. I then cut the sheets and blankets into pieces and cut the entire length of the mattress in a crisscross pattern. "Oh my God, dear, what are you doing?" asked my wife. "I wanted to make sure you weren't here on Thursday afternoon," I replied. "Honey, I told you it's over," said Anne. I ignored her and said, "Show me the bathroom you used." She led me down the hall to the bathroom. There were his and hers sinks with mirrors above each sink. I noticed that on the counter next to one of the sinks was a comb, hairspray, deodorant, eyebrow pencil, lipstick, toothbrush, and toothpaste. "You're serious about this guy? You've already started moving," I said. "This is wrong. I needed to look good when I went back to work," she said. "Take your things. Do you have any clothes here?" I said. Anne replied, "No," and began putting all her things into her purse. I took her eyebrow pencil and wrote the word bastard on the mirror above his sink, and then gave it back to her. I took a wet rag and towel and started wiping down the surfaces in the bathroom. Then I wiped down all the doorknobs and around the bed. We moved downstairs to the living room. There was only a sofa and a TV on the wall, but no laptop. I wiped everything there too. Then I went to the kitchen and did the same. I opened the refrigerator and saw several bottles of beer and a half-gallon of milk and nothing else. I unplugged the refrigerator and hid the cord underneath. I covered the sink with kitchen towels and turned on the water. "It will flood the kitchen," my wife said. "Yes, I know. I think we're done here. Let's go," I said. We went out, and I locked the door with Anne's key. Then I went to Walmart and bought a box of envelopes, a pack of pens, and a small notepad. I also went to the tool department and made a duplicate of Tony's door key. In the car, I made Anne write Tony a note saying she wouldn't come on Thursday, that the affair is over, and that she is returning the key to him, since she no longer needs it. We put the note and the original key in the envelope, and Anne wrote Tony's name on the envelope. I drove to Anne's work and parked nearby. I told her to stay in the car while I took the envelope to the reception and asked her to give it to Tony. We were still wearing gloves, so there were no fingerprints. I drove us home and threw the gloves in the trash can in the garage. We went inside, and I told Anne to sit back down at the kitchen table. "We haven't finished discussing your novel yet. I feel like you have feelings for this guy. Damn it, you've already started moving in with him. All you had to do was bring your clothes. When were you planning to do this? I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me that this is really over," I said firmly. "Oh, honey, I assure you it's over. The things I left in his apartment were just so I would look good when I went back to work. I didn't intend to move in with him. I love you, not Tony. It was just for sex. It didn't mean anything." "I assure you that it's all over," Anne said and tried to hug me, but I stopped her with my hand. "I'm letting you stay here with me because I love you and because I think there's something wrong with you. You have changed a lot lately and have become very difficult to get along with. In short, you have become a bitch. Every time I tried to talk to you, you got angry at me. It is not normal. Until I found out about the affair, I thought you had some kind of mental problems. I even asked our family doctor if you were okay. He assured me that you were healthy, but I was worried that there was something wrong with your brain because the changes were sudden and strong. I place most of the blame for your affair on Tony. He's handsome and I'm sure very convincing. I'm sure he talked you into it and you were stupid enough to believe the crap he told you. He just wanted you in bed and he didn't care about you. I planned to deal with him. As for you, I was disappointed to see that you started moving in with him. Now I understand that the affair was not something random, but something that you completely committed to," I said. "Oh my God, I really ruined everything." "I'm really sorry," said my wife. "If you were drunk and did it once, I could forgive you. But you had sex with him 6 times and started moving in with him. Damn it, this is serious," I said angrily. "Have you had other mistakes with men in the past?" I asked. "No, I've only had sex with you and Tony since we got married," she replied. "Why did you cheat on me? Am I not good enough for you?" I asked. "I do not know why. This, of course, has nothing to do with your abilities in bed. It started out as friendship and somehow turned into sex. I liked it, so I kept dating him," she said, crying. Friendship that turned into sex 6 times. You must have a problem in your head or you're just stupid, I said. Will I divorce you? It's too early to make this decision now. We have been together for 20 years, so there is loyalty on my part. Besides, because of the way you acted, I believe there is something wrong with you. I feel obligated to take care of you until you get better, so I'm leaving divorce as an option for now. I'm done for today. Do you have anything to say? I asked. Yes, I have. I'm not stupid, but I showed a bad assessment. I allowed myself to please him. When I got away with it, I allowed myself to have sex with him, thinking that this too would pass. And if you're wondering, yes, the sex was very good, just without the love. I cannot justify any of these actions to myself or to you. Jim, I've never lied to you about anything. I've always been honest with you. I never said I was with my girlfriends or went shopping when I was with Tony. I never took time away from you to have an affair. I did it all during company work hours. I get paid no matter how long I work. I have given the company free overtime many times, so I have not defrauded the company. Was I going to stop this? Yes, I decided not to meet him on Thursday, Anne explained. Anne thought for a moment and then said, I know you're mad at Tony, but what you did in his apartment seems childish to me. What you saw me do in Tony's apartment was just one of several things I did to annoy him in the last 24 hours. Each of these actions was minor, but each of them was intended to irritate him. When enough of these small, annoying actions accumulate, he will realize that someone is out to get him. Today's action was intended to show him that he is not safe even in his apartment, and that I know he had sex with my wife on that bed. I want to create a feeling of fear in him. I want him to always be looking over his shoulder, waiting for something else to happen. This was not childish, but part of a coordinated attack on him, I explained. What other things have you done to him? Asked Anne. Some of them are best left undiscussed, but I will say that I disturb his sleep, I said. Speaking of sleep, go make the bed in the guest room. You will sleep there. I went to my office and opened the safe. Let me explain. I have classified documents from time to time, which is why I have a Department of Defense approved safe in my office. I also keep quite a lot of cash, several pistols, and 3 working phones in it. I took out my phone, which had Fred's phone written on it on a piece of tape, and called an old friend from the Army. I have used his help many times in my consulting work. Fred is in touch, he replied. This is Juliet India Mike. How are you? I asked. Hey, good to hear from you, Captain, he said. What's happened? Do you remember what we did to Sergeant Lynch when he slept with the wives of all the guys deployed? I asked. Oh yeah, good times. Do you need something like this? He asked. Yes, there is a guy sleeping with my wife, and I need you to talk to him, I explained. Wow, I didn't expect to hear this. I don't think the guy knows who he's dealing with. Do you want the same thing as last time? How serious should the conversation be? Asked Fred. I don't want him dead, but a serious conversation with long-term consequences, I said. I'll mail you the details. Send it. When? Asked Fred. Thursday night, I said. I have the key to his apartment. I'll leave it in our usual place. Do you want me to tell him why? Asked Fred. No, just tell him that sleeping with married women is not acceptable, I said. Got it, Captain. I will contact another beret for assistance. Don't you want to be involved? Asked Fred. I'll be at a fancy dinner with my wife, and then at a Broadway show, I said. Understood. Fred's on the line, he said and hung up. I opened my briefcase and took out Anne's phone. There were several missed calls from Tony, but no voicemails. I blocked his number. I checked her messages, nothing. Then I checked Anna's Facebook on my desktop computer. There was a message from Tony. I received the key. Are you sure you want to stop this? I hope you'll come on Thursday so we can talk. I miss you and want you. Of course he wants Anne. She is beautiful and damn good in bed. However, I want her too, so he must lose. I went to the hiding place and left the key with Tony Fred. Later in the evening, Anne cooked us a delicious dinner, and there was very little talking. I did as you asked. The guest bed is ready, Anne said. You will sleep in the guest bedroom until further notice, I replied. After dinner, Anne watched TV while I worked in the office. Later, when Anne was upstairs getting ready for bed, I checked her Facebook on the computer in my office. There was a message from Tony. Someone broke into my apartment and destroyed everything. This place was also flooded. I'll buy a new mattress in the hope that you'll come on Thursday. I need you. Since I visited my wife's page, I sent him a reply message. My husband found out about us. I told you it's over. I won't come on Thursday. I then unfriended him and blocked him because I didn't want my wife to talk to him anymore. I took one of my work phones out of the safe and put it in my pocket. When I got upstairs, my wife was brushing her teeth in our bathroom. When she went into the guest bedroom, I hid my work phone under the towels in the linen closet. When I entered my bedroom, Anne was standing in the doorway leading into the hallway. I'm sorry we can't make love tonight. I really need your attention today, she said. In my mind, I still see Tony having sex with you. I don't know if I'll ever be able to make love to you again, I replied. Anne quietly went into the guest bedroom and closed the door. I set the alarm on my watch for 2 a.m. and went to bed. When the clock woke me up, I turned it off immediately so as not to wake Anne. I quietly got up and went to our bathroom. I took out my work phone and called Tony. When he answered in a sleepy voice, I said only one word, "Bastard," and hung up. I put the phone away again and went back to bed. I was depriving Tony of sleep. I learned this trick in the army. Losing sleep will make him jittery and unable to think clearly. I want him to know that someone is after him. It's all part of the plan. Environment. Wednesday was a pretty normal day for us. Anne busied herself with washing and cooking. I worked in my office all day. I decided to return Anne her mobile phone, but first I installed the tracker app on it. This app told my phone Anne's exact location. When I handed her the phone, I told her not to call Tony or she'd have to live in a motel. I opened my briefcase and took out Anne's phone. There were several missed calls from Tony, but no voicemails. I blocked his number. I checked her messages, nothing. Then I checked Anna's Facebook on my desktop computer. There was a message from Tony. I got the key. Are you sure you want to stop this? I hope you'll come on Thursday so we can talk. I miss you and want you. Of course he wants Anne. She is beautiful and damn good in bed. However, I want her too, so he must lose. I went to the hiding place and left the key with Tony Fred. Later in the evening, Anne cooked us a delicious dinner, and there was very little talking. I did as you asked. The guest bed is ready, Anne said. You will sleep in the guest bedroom until further notice, I replied. After dinner, Anne watched TV while I worked in the office. Later, when Anne was upstairs getting ready for bed, I checked her Facebook on the computer in my office. There was a message from Tony. Someone broke into my apartment and destroyed everything. This place was also flooded. I'll buy a new mattress in the hope that you'll come on Thursday. I need you. Since I visited my wife's page, I sent him a reply message. My husband found out about us. I told you it's over. I won't come on Thursday. I then unfriended him and blocked him because I didn't want my wife to talk to him anymore. I took one of my work phones out of the safe and put it in my pocket. When I got upstairs, my wife was brushing her teeth in our bathroom. When she went into the guest bedroom, I hid my work phone under the towels in the linen closet. When I entered my bedroom, Anne was standing in the doorway leading into the hallway. Later, Anne served us a delicious dinner. In fact, she does this every evening. She's a great cook and knows what I like. All Anne talked about was her recipes and cooking for us. I hardly spoke. After she washed the dishes, I told her that I wanted her to come with me in the car. I drove us to Tony's apartment and parked across the street from his house. Why are we here? Are you trying to rub my nose into this? Anne asked with anger in her voice. Well, I haven't thought about it, but if it works, then yes. I brought you here to witness something. Just look at Tony's house, I said. You're not going to do anything, are you? Asked Anne. I ignored her. We had been waiting for about 10 minutes when a Ford Escort pulled up in front of Tony's house. The woman came out and went to his door and knocked. Tony came out, kissed her, and they got into her car, holding hands. "This is Sherry from work," Anne said. I started the car and followed them. They went to a cheap restaurant and motel on the other side of town called the Midway Motel and Restaurant. I've been there, and the food is okay, but the motel is known for renting out rooms by the hour. Tony left and went to the office. I took out my phone and turned on the camera app. He walked out holding 2 key cards and got into the woman's car. They drove up to room 110 and parked in front of it. Tony used one of the cards to open the door. She got out of the car, and they both went inside. I took photographs of all of this. "And it seems your lover is interested in more than just you. See why we need to get tested for STDs?" I asked. "That bastard! Sherry is married," Anne said angrily. "I wonder if he did this while he had you. It's good that you decided not to move in with Tony. Plus, he doesn't have a bed anymore. He has to use the motel for his romantic endeavors," I said and laughed. We drove back home. As we entered the house, Anne slammed the garage door and walked up the stairs. I realized that she was very angry, but I wasn't sure at whom exactly. I let her get ready for bed in our bathroom while I stayed in the office. I opened the safe and took out one of the burner phones and called Tony's cell phone. The phone rang and rang until he finally answered. "What?" he said angrily. "Mr. Martin, this is the Aspen Condo Residents Association. We noticed that there is an abandoned car in front of your house. We don't tolerate abandoned cars, so we've asked the police to set up 72-hour surveillance of your car. If you don't fix it and move it within 72 hours, it will be evacuated." "Good evening, Mr. Martin," I said and hung up. I took out my Fred phone and called him. "Fred is on the phone," he said. "I want delivery to the Midway Motel and Restaurant like it used to be," I said. "Got it," Fred said and hung up. When I went upstairs to our bathroom, Anne had just finished her nightly ritual. I realized that she was still angry, but at whom? "I hope you're happy now. You shoved Tony and his bitch right in my face," she said. "Anne, I'm your best friend in the world. I just showed you that your lover is cheating on you. He doesn't seem to have the same feelings for you as you do for him. You were just another woman in his harem. Don't kill the messenger. Your bitchy mood will make you sleep in the guest room. The bed in the master bedroom is for me and my loving wife who used to live here. I hope for her return," I said. Thursday. My wrist alarm woke me up at 1 in the morning. I checked on Anne. She was fast asleep in the guest bedroom. I went to the bathroom and pulled out a burner phone from a stack of towels. I dialed Tony's number. The phone rang for a while until he finally answered breathlessly. "Yeah, they're still there to have sex." "You know Sherry is married, asshole," I said and hung up. At breakfast, I realized that Anne had been crying. I didn't tell her anything. She served us breakfast and then sat down at the table to drink coffee and look at me. "I'm sorry for the way I acted last night," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure who you were mad at," I said. "Both of you," she said. "Anne, I have something planned for us this evening. But first, I want you to reassure me that your affair is over, because last night it seemed like you still had deep feelings for Tony," I said. "I already told you it's over." "So what are your plans? Something to do with Tony again?" she asked angrily. "Stop it, Anne. I'm tired of this. We have dinner reservations at the Brown Palace downtown, and then we'll go to a Broadway play at the Denver Theater. I thought I'd try asking you out," I said. "Oh, Anne began, but I interrupted her. "I'm trying to be kind to you, but you keep killing the messenger. You're still angry and grumpy at me because I showed you that your lover is cheating on you the same way you cheated on me. Think about it. A cheater cheats on his mistress. I was planning on asking you to sleep with me tonight, but your nagging just turned me off. I've suffered enough from your nagging over the past months, and it ends today. You will move all your belongings into the guest bedroom and guest bathroom. Consider it one step closer to the front door. You will stay there until you understand how a devoted and faithful wife should behave. I can't cancel today's reservations, so be dressed up and ready for 6 p.m. Now get out of my sight, I said angrily. Anne's face paled and her eyes widened. She ran out of the room, crying. I worked all day in my office on reports that were due soon. I didn't see Anne, but I heard her moving things into the guest bedroom. I didn't have any reservations already for today, so I decided to organize them. I called Brown Palace and made a reservation for 6:30 p.m. and then called Denver Pa Theater and bought 2 tickets to the play Aladdin. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Fred called me on a burner phone. A poker party is planned for tonight. Will you be somewhere today? Asked Fred. Dinner and a show, I said. It's a pity that you won't be able to come to the poker party. She must be very cheerful. Our game will end shortly before midnight, Fred said and hung up. Around 5 o'clock in the evening, I went upstairs and took a long shower. I shaved again and put on my best suit and tie. I used the cologne that Anne bought me. I noticed that she was also dressed smartly and was applying makeup in the guest bathroom. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, we went to Brown Palace. I told Anne that she looked very good and that she was a really beautiful woman. I can understand why Tony wanted her. I thought Anne would apologize for her nagging, but she didn't say anything in the car. We had a very fancy dinner and then walked to the theater. After the show, we stopped at the Village Inn for pie and iced tea. We returned home around 1 in the morning. I walked Anne to the guest bedroom door. She raised her arms, put her arms around my neck, and kissed me. I had a great time tonight. Thank you, said Anne. I didn't answer her, I just looked at her. She lowered her head and said, Sorry about today. Last night was such an unexpected surprise, and I took it all wrong. I'm sorry that I misinterpreted your intentions about tonight. You really showed how much you care about me. I'm sorry I was such a bitch. I truly love you and want to continue to be your wife. Do you want to sleep with me tonight? Asked Anne. Good night, Anne. Sleep well, I said, and went into the master bedroom, closing the door behind me. Friday. The next morning, I woke up to what Anne was doing to me nicely. It was a good day when you start it like that, and I wasn't going to stop her. Anne told me, I wanted to thank you for last night and for putting up with my nagging. I know it can be difficult sometimes. Then she ran to prepare breakfast for us. Is old Anne back? After breakfast, I went to my office and checked my email. One of them contained the result of tests for STDs. I was all clear, but Anne had an infection. The laboratory recommended that she see her family doctor. I opened the letter and gave it to Anne. I saw her make an appointment over the phone with our family doctor. Later that morning, Anne's secretary at work called her with news. She said that since Anne and Tony were so close, she thought Anne must know about Tony Martin. He was found beaten in the parking lot of the Midway Motel and Restaurant around midnight. Police believe the attack was a robbery because his wallet and credit cards were stolen. Tony's wife flew in later that day, and the architecture firm paid for her room and board. Anne came into my office and relayed the conversation to me verbatim. Do you have anything to do with Tony's injuries? Did you take me out that night so you could have an alibi? Asked Anne. Why do you say that? I asked you out on a date. I wanted to do something nice for you in the hopes that we could start to make peace. I even planned to put you to bed last night. However, your nagging yesterday spoiled it, and now you're nagging at me again. When will you learn? I want the old Anne back because I hate this version of Anne, I said. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by this. It just seemed like Tony's injuries coincided with what you found out about the affair, Anne said. I could have beaten him and would have enjoyed it, but I didn't. Instead, I decided to annoy him so that he would always look over his shoulder to see who was watching him. Now can we get Tony out of our lives? I really don't want to hear his name anymore, I explained angrily. Darling, I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by this, honestly. I made a mistake. Sorry. Anne started crying. Anne, you continue to be angry with me. For the last 3 months or so you've been a bitch most of the time, and I'm tired of it. Good wives don't behave like that, and certainly don't limit their husbands to having sex only on Fridays. Last night, I tried to show you that I still love you and wanted to do something nice for you, but here you are again nagging at me. As a result, I decided to take one more step. We will live separately for a while so that you can sort out your thoughts. We'll both still live here. I'll be in the master bedroom and bathroom, and you'll be in the guest bedroom and bathroom. We will have breakfast together every day, but that will be the limit of our time together. I will dine elsewhere and may sometimes be late. Don't talk to me unless it's an emergency. You need time alone to really think, and don't go out in the evenings because it might result in you having to move into a motel. During our separation, I will also think seriously. Do I want to keep you? Will you continue to be a bitch in the future? Are you worth forgiveness? I said. Darling, I'm sorry. I will do everything to fix everything. Anne was crying. And one more thing, don't go to the hospital with him. His wife is here, and it's her job to be with him, not yours. But if you go to see him in the hospital, don't come home. Trust me, if you go to the hospital, I will know about it. You can't hide this from me. You won't need to take your things because I will destroy everything. I was too kind to you, but your bitchy behavior killed my efforts to reconcile with you, I said. Later that day, I called Fred on the Fred phone. Captain, sir, he said. I heard the poker party was a success, I said. You missed a good time, he said. How much did I lose? I asked. $950 should cover your losses. Can you give them to me mostly in my 20s? He asked. I'll leave them in our usual place, I said. I finished typing up some photos from my phone of Tony and his date. I wrote 2 letters and printed them out. I folded each letter and included several photographs. I put each set in an envelope and signed a name on each one. For my next case, I needed to look like a bailiff or someone official. I put on a white shirt with a dark tie. I chose a tweed jacket. I took $950 in cash from the safe and locked it. I went towards Bowl. Deru left the money at our usual place. I then went to the hospital where Tony was being treated. I wore my colored glasses to complete my formal look. I walked into the hospital and asked what room Tony was in. When I approached his room, there was a red-haired woman sitting on a chair by the bed. Tony was asleep and connected to many tubes and wires. His head was all bandaged. I put my hand on the red-haired woman's shoulder and handed her an envelope marked Linda. I'm sorry, madam, I said and left. She turned around and wanted to say something, but I had already left. She opened the envelope and read the letter. Dear Linda Martin, it is with great regret that I inform you that your husband is sleeping with married women from his office. He was found lying in the parking lot of the motel where he took these women. I suspect some angry husband sent Tony a message. The police believe it was a robbery, and perhaps it is best to leave them with that belief. This will keep his affairs secret from newspapers and television. You don't have to believe this letter, so I've attached photos. They were taken to the same motel where Tony was found. If I were you, I wish someone would have told me. Then I drove to Anne's work and gave another envelope to the receptionist. It was addressed to Lionel Miller, the CEO and founder of an architecture firm. His letter read, Dear Mr. Miller, your new employee, Tony Martin, is sleeping with married women from your company. If you have a no intimacy policy, he's violating it and you're not following it. Tony could cost you millions of dollars in compensation to these women's husbands. Is it worth the expense and publicity for your well-known company? The women are not to blame and should not be fired because he may be blackmailing them. He's a master at seducing married women, and I suspect this isn't the first time. He was found beaten in front of the motel where he took these women. Perhaps his angry husband sent him a message. Police believe it was a robbery. To reduce your firm's publicity, let them continue to believe it. However, you should conduct an internal investigation of your firm. In the future, maintain a no intimacy policy. In one of the photos, Tony is standing in front of the room he used on Wednesday, and one of your married employees can be seen approaching him to join him inside. I decided to have a steak dinner at Texas Roadhouse. After dinner, I sat at the bar, sipping a few Cokes and watching a football game on TV. I got home at 10:30 p.m. and went straight to my bedroom, slamming the door loudly so that Anne could hear that I was home and not in the mood. Time passed slowly over the next week. Anne returned to work, but I could sense that there was tension in her office. Everyone knew that she and Tony were a couple, and now Tony was beaten. I suspect there was a lot of talk at the water cooler. In addition, her company was conducting an investigation into Tony. Anne had been called twice to see the HR director and lawyer for an architecture firm and was worried about keeping her job. The seriousness of her affair began to depress her. Every morning when Anne left for work, she would come to my office door and say goodbye. She stopped doing this a few months ago, probably when she started dating Tony. I knew where Anne was at every moment of the day thanks to an app on her phone. When she came to work, she stayed there. At the end of the workday, she always left on time and sometimes stopped for groceries on the way home. When she returned home, she never left again. Anne tried to talk to me several times, but I just walked away. She always started with an apology, which I was already tired of. On Tuesday evening of that week, 2 police detectives came to our house. They explained to my wife and me that during their investigation, they had discovered that Tony had been having sex with women from the architecture firm. They spoke to Anne alone first. She later told me that they just wanted to confirm that she had a sexual relationship with Tony. She confessed and said that I knew about it. They then asked her where she was on Thursday night, and she talked about our date. They also asked her if her husband wanted revenge on Tony. She said, "No, he's not like that." When they spoke to me privately, they wanted to know where I was that Thursday night. I told them about our date. I showed them the bill for dinner and tickets to the show. They asked if I knew about the affair, and I said I just found out. They wanted to know what I was going to do about it. I explained that we were trying to work this out, but divorce was still on the table. They asked me if I had any plans for Tony. I told them I was going to sue the architecture firm for millions because of Tony. I assured them that I had no intention of hurting Tony over the pending lawsuit. They asked me if I knew anyone or another husband who would want to hurt Tony. I said I didn't know any of the other husbands. We haven't heard from the police again. Friday, first week. Today, I decided to play with Tony's mind again. When we did difficult interrogations in the military, we used the old good cop versus bad cop technique. The bad investigator would dress in a uniform with full regalia to show that he was in charge and explain all the bad things that could happen if the person did not cooperate. Later, the good investigator came in casual camouflage uniform and treated the person more relaxed. He was usually successful in obtaining information. So in order to deal with Tony, I had to be the bad cop. I put on my black suit, white shirt, dark tie, and mirrored sunglasses. I went to the safe and took my favorite pistol, which I put in a holster on my belt. It may seem childish to play Men in Black, but my goal was to instill fear in Tony's mind. I went to the hospital where Tony was being treated. I went into his room and closed the door. There was no wife nearby. Tony was sitting in bed, his face no longer bandaged, most of the tubes and wires no longer connected to him. I knew his jaw was wired and he couldn't speak. He looked shocked and worried when he saw me. I'm sure he thought the men in black were coming for him. "Tony, I know you can't talk, so I won't ask any questions," I said, approaching his bed. "I see that you recognize my form. The agency I work for deals with problems involving officials in Washington. You and I have never met. I'm Anne's husband. I know you know Anne because you both work at the same place, plus you had her in your apartment. I heard that your bed was destroyed. I don't think you'll have anyone there anytime soon. I heard that 2 people gave you a message that you should not sleep with other people's wives. I think you should pay attention to their message because next time it could be deadly," I said. I unbuttoned my jacket and threw it aside to show my gun. Tony's eyes became the size of saucers, and he began to shake his head no. "I want you to know that I didn't do it, because I had a date with Anne that evening, and I have many witnesses. By the way, I wouldn't tell the police about our conversation because the police think it was a robbery. I just wanted to see how you were feeling. I noticed that your wife is not here. Perhaps she found out about your adventures, I said. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out 4 valves that I had cut off of Tony's tires. I dropped them into his lap. I found this and thought you might need it, I said. Then I leaned close to his ear and whispered so only he could hear. I will watch you every day. I will know everything you do. You will have nowhere to hide. I heard that even inside your house is not safe. If I were you, I'd be very careful after I leave the hospital. These 2 may still be looking for you, but I don't know anything about it. Maybe you should move to the West Coast. They say there is pleasant sun and beaches. Have a nice day, asshole, I said. I emphasized my last sentence by showing him the gun again, and then left his room. I drove past Tony's condo and noticed his BMW was missing. The car still had flat tires when Tony went to the hospital, and now it's gone. His wife must have fixed the tires and took the car back to Texas. The second week was very difficult for Anne. I noticed that she was not eating well and was not sleeping. At breakfast, I saw her red eyes and dark circles under her eyes. She didn't smile anymore. We had breakfast every morning, but didn't talk. She would come to my office door and say bye as she left for work. I didn't know what she was doing when she came home from work because I was trying to get out of the house. I would have dinner at some restaurant and then go shopping until 8:30 or 9 p.m. I don't drink, so I didn't go to bars and wasn't interested in women. After that, I drove home and went straight to the bedroom. Friday, second week. I received an email from Fred that Tony is being released from the hospital at 4 p.m. today. I put my black suit back on and the gun on my belt and went to the hospital. I sat on a bench right next to the main entrance. When the Uber car pulled up, I assumed Tony would be out soon, so I walked over to her side and waited. The hospital doors opened automatically and a nurse wheeled Tony in his wheelchair to the Uber. I walked over and opened the back door of the car for Tony. When he saw me, his body jerked, and he turned to the nurse, trying to say, "No, no, no," with a fixed jaw. "Tony, just relax. I will watch you every hour of every day," I said with a smile. He limped noticeably and had difficulty getting into the back seat. I deliberately pulled my jacket aside so Tony could see my gun. As I closed the door, I said, "Have a nice day." Uber left, and the nurse told me, "He's pretty badly hurt, so I'm glad you'll be looking after him." "Yes, madam. Have a nice day," I answered. I nodded to her and walked to my car. I took off my black jacket and tie and went to one of my favorite restaurants. I got home around 7 p.m. and went straight to my bedroom to read. Monday, third week. My wife called me and told me that 3 key people from her firm were going to visit Tony, the firm's lawyer, the director of human resources, and the vice president of operations. She said they had just left, but she didn't know why they wanted to see him. She later found out that they forced him to sign a lot of documents and then fired him. The condo was owned by an architecture firm for out-of-town clients, so they gave Tony a week to move out. The third and fourth weeks passed, and Anne stopped trying to talk to me. We had breakfast together, and she always said goodbye when she left for work, but that was all. During the day, we both worked. In the evenings, I ate out and returned late. Thursday, week 5. Since I hadn't spoken to her, Anne wrote a short handwritten letter on Thursday and taped it to my bedroom door. It said, "My dear husband, I tried to talk to you, but you just closed me off. I am very sorry for the affair and for my actions when I found out that Tony had been attacked. I was very mistaken in how I perceived it all. I had time to think about everything. I told myself it was just sex with Tony, but I realized that you can't sleep with someone 6 times and not have any feelings for them. I see that the feelings were one-sided. He only wanted me for sex. Even though I told you it was over, I realized I couldn't turn off my feelings like a switch. But you showed me that Tony was seeing someone else, and that helped me forget him. I'm sorry I behaved this way. I put Tony into my past, just like the men I slept with before I met you. I never think about any of them, and Tony is in the same category now. I understand that I hurt you with this affair. This is something I didn't think about at that moment. I admit that I was only thinking about myself. I have left Tony in the past and am trying to forget him, but I understand that you cannot so easily forget about my affair. I betrayed you and you lost trust and perhaps love for me. I made a huge mistake by contacting Tony. He is very handsome and much younger than me. When he started paying attention to me, I gave into it. He told me nice things about the kind of person I am and the way I dress. He was clearly seducing me, and I was too stupid to understand it. However, I will not use this as an excuse for my affair. I agreed to this and took full responsibility. I understand that you are not sure if you want me as a wife after this, and I understand why. If the situation had been reversed, I would have treated you even worse than you treated me. I didn't realize how badly I hurt you. I didn't realize I was such a bitch. I wish we could find time to talk. All I ask is one conversation so that we can express everything that is on our hearts. Find out everything to the end. Talk non-stop until we say everything. If after this you still want a divorce, I will understand and accept that. Regardless of whether you divorce me or not, please at least let me live with you. I will be the best cook, housekeeper, companion, and sexual partner you can imagine. I really, really need sex, and I know you suffer too. You can use my body at any time and do whatever you want with it. Without obligations, you don't even need to talk to me. You don't have to sleep with me, but God, I wish I could. I miss hugs and waking up together. I love you more now than on our wedding day. I realized how much I depend on you and how much I need you. I hate myself for what I did to you, and I'm so lonely that I just want to die. With love, Anne. I read the letter several times and admit that even the tough guy inside me cried. I admit I didn't think much about reconciliation or divorce. In fact, I was suppressing thoughts about Anne's affair. I truly believe that 90% of the blame lies with Tony, and addressing the issue with him will solve most of the problem. However, Anne needed to be taught a lesson, so I arranged for us to live separately. Anne needed time to process the affair and stop being a bitch, which I believe was caused by her interactions with Tony. I decided that I would talk to her this coming Saturday. I posted a note on the guest bedroom door that said, "Talk Saturday after breakfast." Friday, 5th week. Breakfast was quiet as usual, and Anne came into my office and said goodbye as she left for work. Later that day, I found a note from Anne on my bedroom door. "Jim, today is Friday, and we used to make love on Fridays. I miss it, and I know you suffer too. Whenever you come back tonight, you can use me however you want. No talking, without obligations, just pure sex. We don't have any STDs, and my infection has cleared up. You don't need to sleep with me." Anne. I admit this was out of character for Anne, so she must be in desperate straits. I laughed at the irony of her note. Is she throwing "sex only on Fridays" in my face? I'll have to see how I feel in the evening. I arrived home around 8 p.m. Anne was sitting on her bed, reading a book, and was completely naked. I stopped in the doorway and picked up her note. "When I brought you to your lover's house, you accused me of rubbing your nose into it, and we had a quarrel. So I have to ask you, are you throwing "sex only on Fridays" in my face by asking me for sex tonight?" I asked. "Damn it, this is not what I meant. I didn't think about it when I wrote the note. I just remembered that we used to make love on Fridays, and today is Friday. I ruined everything again. Crap, damn it, I can't seem to do anything right," Anne said, and began to cry. I went into her room, hugged her, and let her cry on my shoulder. "I wanted to do something special for you. I know you suffer too because I suffer. I'm so unhappy and I want sex so bad tonight. Sorry, I just can't do anything right," said Anne. "A few weeks ago, you would have yelled at me for accusing you of throwing sex on Fridays in my face, but today you're acting more like the old Anne," I said. "Darling, I'm trying very hard, but—" She didn't finish the sentence and just started crying. "Anne, pull yourself together. Go put the diaphragm in and come to our bed with me," I said. While I was undressing in my bedroom, I heard the shower turn on in the master bathroom. She didn't shower for long and soon appeared naked in my bed and crawled under the covers. I reached out to her and pulled her close to me. We kissed for a long time. It's going to be a great evening tonight. I don't know what time we finally fell asleep hugging each other, but it was early in the morning. Saturday, 5th week. Anne got up before me. I smelled the bacon cooking, so I got up and got dressed. When I reached the kitchen, Anne was serving up a large breakfast of eggs, bacon, potatoes, and waffles. Anne seemed happier than I had seen her in months. I heard her humming and smiling at me a lot. We didn't talk much at breakfast, except Anne said, "Thank you for last night." Afterwards, she gathered up her dishes and joined me at the table with a cup of coffee and a notepad. "You asked in your letter to meet and talk, so go ahead. Tell me what's on your mind," I said. Anne's conversation. "I know I've repeated, 'I'm sorry' to death, so I won't do it again. I know some of this will be painful for both of us to hear, but we need to talk it out so we can put it behind us and focus on reconciliation. I have a few notes to make sure I don't forget anything important and stay on topic. I need to tell you how it all started, not so much for you, but for myself. I need to tell this to someone to survive this affair, and I want you to know everything. This is really difficult for me, so be patient. Every day at work, Tony was very attentive to me, many compliments, followed by offers to have lunch together. I finally agreed, and we had lunch together almost every day for 2 weeks. I noticed that some of the bosses and managers had noticed us, so Tony suggested that we leave separately and meet in his car for lunch. When I got into his car, he grabbed me and started kissing me. He was very good at it, and I have to admit that I liked it. I've been feeling a little old lately, so it was nice to have someone younger than me take an interest in me. He tried to get into my bra, but I pushed him away. Then I delivered it to his pleasure. After that dinner, I thought a lot about what I did. I felt very guilty, but deep down it reminded me of what I did in college. There was something exciting about it. In the following days, I realized that I had gotten away with it. There were no consequences because you didn't know about it, and no one at work knew either. So the next time we went to lunch, he took me to his condo. We kissed a little, and he groped me. I decided to have sex with him, thinking that I could get away with it too. He was a very good lover and played me like a violin. The sex was very good. Sex was exciting because I knew I shouldn't do it. I was euphoric afterwards and drove back to the office feeling like I was on a cloud. But in the office, I was reminded of what I had done. I realized that I cheated on you and had unprotected sex. I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown until my next period started. I couldn't imagine what you would do if I got pregnant. We couldn't meet every day because of his work commitments, so it was random when we went to his house. He didn't tell me until the morning that he wanted to meet. I couldn't wear a diaphragm every day in case he wanted me. I was also worried that you might check to see if my diaphragm had disappeared. The only solution was to buy the condoms you found in my purse. He gave me the key to his condo so I could come over on weekends. I never intended to go out with him on the weekends. On those days when he wanted to meet, I left work 10-15 minutes before him and went to his house. Since I had the key, I could go in and get ready for it. Then he came and we had sex. We only did this once per meeting because we had to go back to work. The last 2 times we dated, I no longer felt euphoric after sex, and it wasn't as exciting anymore. In fact, it became monotonous. After these last 2 times, when I returned to work, I felt only regret, guilt, and self-hatred. The day I accidentally called you Tony, I finally decided in the morning that I would not go to see him next Thursday. I just couldn't do it anymore. We've both read stories on the internet about unfaithful wives, and I know that men want to know if he was bigger than me and if the sex was better than with me. So I'll tell you that he wasn't bigger than you. In fact, he was smaller, but he really knew how to use it. As for the sex, yes, it was pretty good and I enjoyed it. I can't compare it to what you and I have because it's different. Let me explain. The sex with him was good, and at first I was euphoric after it, but by the time I returned to work, it wore off. Then for several days I felt guilty and remorseful. This added a lot of stress. The last 2 times there was no euphoria, only guilt and self-hatred. When we make love, it's different. I feel loved after this, and you always hold me in your arms. The next day, I still feel this love and am happy. There is no stress after this. It was Tony's idea to limit you to having sex with me only on Fridays. That way I would be fresh for him all week, and we could do it any day he could be free for lunch. Tony had something that didn't allow him to meet me on Fridays. So you wouldn't suspect anything, and you wouldn't get second rate. Now I understand how difficult it was for you, because until last night I myself had not made love for several weeks in a row. I was very ill. The romance was finally completed when I mistakenly called you Tony. That night, I desperately wanted to tell you everything so I could stop hiding the affair. But you were so angry. I was scared of you, and for the first time I was afraid that you could harm me. I've never seen you so angry. As for my bitchiness, it probably started when I started having lunch with Tony. At first, I wanted to spend a lot of time with him, but I couldn't because I was with you. It made me angry, and I took it out on you. Later, I felt guilty and hated myself for what I did. Now I understand that I was angry at myself, not at you, but I transferred my anger to you. I'm sorry that I treated you this way. With Tony no longer in our lives, especially mine, there is no reason why I should be a bitch to you. I can go back to the old Anne you love. I don't understand how you feel about me. Sometimes you get mad at me, but then you took me on this wonderful date, and I thought maybe you had forgiven me and we could be husband and wife again. But then my bitchiness pissed you off again, and you kicked me out of your bedroom. I don't know if we're going to get back together or get divorced. Regardless of this, I hope that you will accept my offer to live with you, as I wrote in my letter. I want to tell you that I regret everything I did to Tony, even the lunches at work. I think I agree with you that it was stupid. I am very sorry for the pain and suffering I caused you. I felt the mistrust you had for me, and I don't blame you. I can say that after all this, I will never look at another man again, regardless of whether we are together or not. I want you to know that I love you very much, and will do everything so that we can be together again. Well, I said everything I wanted, and it made me feel better. Thank you for letting me talk to you. You were very kind without interrupting or yelling at me. And I have one question. How can I be sure that this won't happen again when the next handsome young guy starts complimenting you? I asked. This whole situation scared me to death. I never want to go through this again. I promised myself that I would never sleep with anyone but you again. Even if you divorce me, I will not have sex with another man. I would prefer to remain single for the rest of my life, Anne replied. My conversation. Anne, I'm not sure I needed to hear some of the details, but I see that you needed to express it all. Now that we've shared all this information, I don't want to discuss it again, and I never want to hear Tony's name again. That Monday night when you called me Tony, I was angrier than I've ever been in my life. I was angry at you because you cheated on me. It was something I never thought would happen to us. But it happened. I was very angry with Tony because I blamed him for the affair and wanted to hurt him. However, most of all, I was angry with myself. It bothered me that I didn't know anything about your affair. I make my living doing intelligence work. I'm supposed to be an intelligence expert, and here my wife is sleeping with another man, and I didn't know anything about it. When I saw that you moved some of your things into his apartment, I realized that my marriage was over, and I wanted to hurt you both, but I calmed down, I explained. Oh my God, I had no idea, said Anne. For the last 4 or 5 months, you have been very difficult to communicate with. You often got angry at me and often raised your voice, both of which are out of character. You were so selfish that you couldn't understand that your words hurt me. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. I knew that something was wrong in your life, and you were showing your dissatisfaction by taking it out on me. All I could think about was that there was something wrong with you physically or mentally. The novel didn't even cross my mind. I contacted our family doctor about 2 months ago and talked to him. He looked at your examination last year and said that there was nothing physically wrong with you. He said he couldn't comment on your mental state. Because your personality had changed, I began to think that you might have mental problems, and I didn't know how to discuss this with you without causing you to react explosively. So, Anne, your bitchiness needs to stop. I won't tolerate this anymore. So before you say something bitchy to me, stop and think about what hotel you want to stay at the next day. If this continues, I will divorce you. And I'm still sexually active, and I need to have sex quite often. Over the years, we have reduced the frequency somewhat, mainly due to your work and fatigue, but recently you have reduced it to once a week. I couldn't understand how you lived with sex only once a week, but now I know you got it elsewhere, and I didn't. The night you called me Tony, you denied me sex under the pretext of being tired, but when we started, you really enjoyed it. In fact, when I stopped, you begged me to continue. It just goes to show that you enjoy sex with me, and I'd bet it's better than what you got from Tony. And if we are seriously considering reconciliation, there are things we need to discuss. You hurt me, and there will be consequences for it. I'll sleep in the master bedroom, and you'll sleep in the guest room until I say otherwise. I have sexual needs that you haven't satisfied. In the future, I insist that we have sex at least every other day, and no, only on Fridays, and I'm too tired after work. This is non-negotiable. You will do this, or we will get divorced. To regain the trust I lost in you, I will need to know where you are and what you are doing every minute of every day. You will call me every day when you come to work. You will call me every day when you leave work and inform me of any stops on the way home. I will ask you not to dine with men unless you have another woman with you. You will unlock your phone and give it to me to check once a week and not delete your calls or messages until I look at them. If you don't want to do all these things, then divorce is the only option. I'm tired of living the way we lived. I don't have to live this way. You understand? I asked. Yes, I understand. I had to do all these things throughout the years of our marriage. You can even put a tracker on my car so you know where I am. I agree with all. As for sex, I already said in my letter that you can have me anytime and anywhere, Anne said. Yes, you offered your body, but I don't want a wife who just lies with her legs apart. I want an active partner. So now you know what you need to do, I explained. We both got up from the table and hugged. I think we both had tears in our eyes. Darling, look at me. I see something in your eyes. Maybe we should start with you using my body to satisfy your needs, Anne said, giggling. We went to our bedroom and repeated the previous night. According to his neighbors, Tony drove off in a rented U-Haul truck within a week of returning home from the hospital. Neighbors said Tony walked with a noticeable limp and used a cane while loading the truck. I don't know where he went, and it doesn't matter to me. His wife probably divorced him because her Facebook page states that